Hey, this is Nathan Gray of Nathan Gray and the Iron Roses, and you're listening to the New Scene Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New Scene. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
And we're back with another brand new episode. Did you think we weren't going to be here? Did you think there was not going to be another episode of this show this week? Is that what you thought? I mean, come on. What are we doing? What are we? Tell me. I'm waiting.
We're consistent, if anything.
No, see, Tommy, I'm asking the audience what we are.
Oh, well,
I've been hanging in the breeze. I need to know what we are so we can move forward with this relationship.
What we are is successful.
That's right. Don't forget it. All right, folks. Tonight on the show, the one, the only, Dan Ozzi, author of Sellout. Now, if you haven't read this book, I suggest you go pick it up right now. Great book. Great interview. You're going to love this conversation.
Guy's really, really great to interview. You can clearly tell he does a lot of like press and stuff. Like he has like very smart answers to things and anecdotes that go along with them. And there's a lot of stuff that came out that I just didn't know. Like things that, when you read the book, that, if you're not familiar with it, chapter by chapter, it really catalogs a different band and goes through the kind of process they went through from being like kind of underground to being mainstream. And, man, there's just so much work that went into it. And it was just really cool to talk to him about his process of writing.
Yeah, and we haven't spoken to a writer yet, so we get to dig into the specifics of that and building a writing career. And I have to say, Dan is really funny, too.
Oh, yeah.
We were laughing a lot.
I don't want to say it. Never mind. I was going to
Yeah, you know what? We're giving away too much even now. How about that? So you're going to enjoy the conversation with Dan Ozzi soon enough. But listen, folks, we are in week 2 of the New Scene charity drive. Now, you enjoy the content of the New Scene, but we require listener support for... all right. Here's what we need. You heard last episode, I'm going to ask again, reviews. We need Apple Podcast and Spotify reviews. Go into the apps and give us a 5-star review. I'm not going to explain how to do it again. Listen to the Walter episode. There are specific instructions. We need reviews. The reviews help us out a lot. We need followers. We need YouTube subscribers, like and comment, all that nonsense. We say it a lot because it helps us a lot. So give it to us. We need it. We're like notification junkies. We want it. We need it. We're itching. Hear that? We're itching for more. And our shirt, our life is music is life. Beautiful, sexy, wonderful, long sleeve shirt is available for purchase. Check the link in our Instagram or Twitter bios. Buy the shirt. Best way you can support us right now. That money goes directly into Tommy's pocket so that he can spend it at Costco.
Yeah, and I buy cinnamon buns and all kinds of fun stuff, crappy jeans and loosely fitting socks.
So we can't deny Tommy that. We just can't. It would ruin his life. So please support us. Buy the shirt. It's a good shirt. Tommy, I'm actually going to wear the shirt when I get it.
Oh, so am I.
Yeah.
100%.
Does that break the rule? Like you're not supposed to wear your own band shirt?
No, because it's not really a band. And I think the other thing is it's a good conversation starter when people are like, oh, what's the New Scene? You'd be like, it's a thing that I do. And wait, I mean that these guys do. And it's really awesome.
Yeah. Just don't wear it to work.
Oh my God, no.
And I just want to say thank you to all of our fans, all of our listeners. We've gotten so much great feedback on the Walter Schreifels episode. So everybody who posted a story, everybody who made a post on their Instagram account, everybody who spread the word, we see you and we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Oh, 100%. It's really nice to see support, especially like when you see names that you recognize, like people like that have, even guests that have been on the show that like reposting. You're like, thank you. I really do appreciate that. It really helps us out a lot. And on top of that, it's nice to know that the people out there that listen do support us.
Yeah, we really appreciate you. Thank you. And on to music news. Now, there's so much going on I almost can't stand it, Tommy. Now, first, Iodine Recordings has announced a new signing. All right, are you ready for this?
Go.
Here we go. Please welcome to the Iodine roster, Nathan Gray and the Iron Roses. Nathan Gray and the Iron Roses are now part of the Iodine roster. You know Nathan Gray. He's been involved in much great music over the years. And we are now label mates, Tommy, with Nathan Gray.
And we've interviewed him before, and he was unbelievably awesome and told great stories.
One of my favorite discussions on our entire show, for sure. Yeah, so if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it. Welcome, Nathan Gray. We look forward to speaking to you again soon. And there's a lot of new music out there. I'm going to start with Rollo Tomasi. The LP is out, Where Myth Becomes Memory. Now, Tommy, if we had to do a best records of the year list right now, today, this would be number one for me.
I haven't gotten a chance to listen to it all the way through, but what I did listen to on the ride home today is absolutely incredible. What they do really well is they walk the line between heavy music and post-rock. It's phenomenal. There's not many people out there doing anything like it, and they are slowly becoming one of my favorite bands in that style of music.
Yeah, the balance is perfect. I listened to the whole record through twice, Tommy, and my favorite song is still Cloaked, the song that I listened to 45 times that one day and sent to you.
It's a good. That came with a really cool video that you have a good knack for like syncing up the music and the video or the audio that goes along with it. That was a cool one.
Yeah, I feel that Rollo Tomasi should release my Instagram story video in some capacity. What do you think of that?
I think that's a great idea. I think it would do nothing but help them.
Well, congrats, Rollo Tomasi, on an excellent new LP. We love it. And our dear friends, Tommy, Circa Survive, have released A Dream About Death. Let me hear your thoughts first.
So I was a little like I didn't know really what to think of it when I first listened to it. I listened to it on the way to work today, and actually I listened to the single that came out, Electric Moose, and it was one of the times where I'm going, again, Circa has done something completely new and completely out of left field, and yet at the same time still recognizable as Circa. There's so many bands out there that try to reinvent themselves and end up kind of going off the deep end or taking too far of a path to one direction, and they lose a lot of the people that are with them, or they go in a direction that you don't expect, and it's really not great. But Circa has done this in a way that it's a strong move towards an electronic sound, but it fits, it works, and I'm just so glad that this turned out in a way that they're going to have all the fans that they already still have, and this is going to bring in some brand new people that have really not been exposed to Circa, and it's going to be a whole new group of people that are just going to be excited and be able to go listen to the back catalog work.
Yeah, I love it. Another great entry in the new era of Circa. My favorite tracks are Late Nap and Buzzhenge. The whole thing is great. Highly recommended. Check it out. And we want to send our well wishes out to Circa Survive too. They had to cancel the Blue Sky Noise anniversary tour again because of COVID, and they announced that Anthony is having some mental health issues that he's working through. Whatever's going on, Anthony, we wish you the best, and the rest of the band, we wish you the best. You know, they're our friends, Tommy.
Yeah, and with everything with Anthony, my biggest concern is always making sure that everybody's priority, whether you are a fan or a friend, is everybody's health and well-being. You know, I know people are disappointed. I know people are like, well, this is the second time. Well, shut up. I've known Anthony since I was 13 years old. This would not be done without warrant. Like, there is something legitimate happening and it needs to be taken care of. So I understand people's disappointment, but I follow a couple people that are like, Circa Survive fan pages, and the outpouring of people, being understanding and really hoping for Anthony, his recovery and getting better, is overwhelming. So I'm just so glad that their fans are, just really welcoming and accepting people, and most importantly, understanding and supportive.
I did scan the Instagram post just to see if there was any negative people in there. And thankfully, every comment I saw was positive, and that's the way it should be, because the health and well-being of everybody in that band is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Oh, and Tommy, I did listen to that new Meshuggah track, The Abysmal Eye.
Oh, yeah.
Insanely good. And I mean this in the best way. There was such a weird time signature towards the end. It's like my brain couldn't process it. It was like a blip. I was like, wait, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. During some of the straightforward metal parts, it's very easy to capture, okay, the rhythm is easy to come along with, but there are some fills in there that you're like, I know this guy's a genius and I know he is absolutely on time, but in my head, I'm going like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, there's this extra snare hit, and I'm like, what is that? How is he doing that?
I don't get it. The other one, in terms of new releases, is Kubla Khan put out that new EP. It is called Swan Song. It has Scott Vogel from Terror on it. It is called Swan Song. The lyrics are unbelievably powerful, and on top of that, the track is just crushing. They are such a great band. I love everything that they do, and I love that they never shy away from things that are uncomfortable to talk about, and this song full on addresses things that are definitely, as a touring band, they've run into, and it is really, really, it's a powerful song, but at the same time, just the breakdowns are just crushing. It's so good.
Yes, congrats Kubla Khan on another great release. But now, folks, it is time. We are going to speak to Dan Ozzi. Enjoy. All right, folks, we're here now with Dan Ozzi. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have you here, Dan. And I'm going to start off by asking you, how are you doing today?
Today, I'm pretty good, except I just had an interview. I got bumped, I guess is the industry term, just before this, for the third time. And it's like, okay,
no.
fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. I mean, this is what I'm saying is it's my fault at this point,
Are you willing to reveal the show
no,
that
I
has
can't.
bumped you?
I can't. That's, against the podcaster's code.
Yeah, I feel you on that. What is the Dan Ozzi policy in that case? Like, you've been bumped 3 times. Would you still go on again if they contacted you?
Yeah,
or
we're gonna try to do it tomorrow, because I was like, well, that's it for me. I gotta have some set of standards. I'm a friggin' best-selling author. Come on. And then they were like, can we do it tomorrow? And I was like, all right.
Okay.
What else am I gonna do?
Because if you clamp down and say, all right, I'm not doing it, ultimately you're only hurting yourself.
Right. Yeah. So, maybe I can just, what I would like to do is just get a friend who knows enough that they can just fill in for me. That's what I should hire, like a TaskRabbit or like a Fiverr to just do this for me.
I've had that thought where I'm like, I don't know what any of the people actually sound like that I speak to in most cases. So it could just be any guy or any person.
It would be great if it was like a woman that came on the show and was like, you seem to not know a whole lot about this book. And she'd just be like, no, it's me, Dan Ozzi. And it's like, you have a weird Russian accent also. It's like, no.
Da.
I'm him, the guy from the book.
So you live in Los Angeles.
Yes, that's right.
How long have you been out there?
I am almost about to hit 3 years, which is not that long considering it was only like 11 normal months, and then the hell world that we live in now.
How did you end up out there?
By plane. I got on one, and then they opened the door and they were like, welcome to Los Angeles. And I was like, okay, great. I live here now, I guess. Is that
But why? Like, why move? You were from New York City originally,
Here's
right?
the thing.
Or you lived in New York City?
I was born and raised in New York City, but I just love traffic. I love everything about it. I love sitting in it. I love talking about it with friends. I love downloading apps that tell me about traffic. And it just seemed like this was the place to be. If you're a big traffic head, LA is where it's at. It's the big traffic scene happening out here.
Yeah, so that seems to be the place for you then. That is why I would never want to live there, because Dan, as a former New York resident, you know how spoiled we get here with, I can walk to everything in half a block, or, I take 2 subway stops to where I'm going. So the idea of sitting in traffic for 2 hours to go 10 miles each way is not
one
great.
of the things that blew my mind when I first moved here, like before I owned a car, is that there really aren't bodegas here, or at least like there
Right.
are, but they're kind of like few and far between. And so like just having my mind blown that like you couldn't just walk from anywhere to get just like an 11 p.m. Sprite and Entenmann's donut combo. I was like, what? But I need it though. It's 11 p.m. and I need my snacks, and I just can't do that. So that took me so long to get used to out here. Like one of the thing that I wish I could change most is the bodega on every corner.
I'm with you on that. I will get a hankering for a Haagen-Dazs ice cream bar at midnight, so I will walk out of my apartment, and the streets are bare. So I walk directly down the middle of the street like a crazy person to the bodega, and
Good
I
feeling.
love it.
You're just under the street lights, and you just spend $2.50 on one item. Isn't that great? Like now I like, oh yeah, I food shop like once a week and I stock up and then I have food for the week, whatever. But I miss just like, no, I would like to purchase one ice cream bar for just so much more than it would work out to if I just bought a box of 6 of them, like 3 times the price is that. But I want one and I want it now. So
I didn't want to address that, but I would. I'm a bulk buyer. I'm a Costco guy.
Yeah.
I'm put everything in the freezer. I got a couple refrigerators at my house. I have a couple deep freezers.
couple
stock.
Couple refrigerators. I didn't realize I was on the line with a bunch of friggin' Rockefellers over here. You're the richest person I have ever heard of. 2 refrigerators.
2 refrigerators. It's like the Carnegies over here.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I have 2 also. Sorry. I was like, wait, also, hold on. Now that I'm thinking about it, I have a second one too. Okay. Never mind. I guess that's not that impressive.
But I like buying stuff that I would normally buy at a convenience store and just stocking up on at my house. Like Keith comes over my house and we'll have I have glass bottle Coke and I have 30 of them sitting downstairs ready to go.
What is a good 10 p.m. bodega snack haul for you? Like me personally, I think I'm going like a root beer and a Andy Cap hot fries. Like I think that's a respectable order. Those go together, I think.
Oh, absolutely. That's good. I do. What's the good cream soda they have here in New York? Is it Dr. something?
They got Virgil's?
I can't remember it. It'll come to me, but I do a Haagen-Dazs ice cream bar or Chipwich, the original Chipwich. And then I have these little Sprites or the cream soda.
Yeah, how about a cream soda and a coffee cake? That'd be like a Drake's coffee cake. Ooh. They just changed the shape of them. And it's bizarre. That's bizarre to me. Why would they do it? I feel like it's messing with me specifically. And it says on the package, like, new shape. I was like, well, but we were just getting used to we were fine with this. Like, the shape that it was, we were fine with that. We didn't need a new coffee cake shape.
So, Dan, let's get to know you a little bit.
I feel like you did just now. I feel like the most intimate thing you could tell a person is their bodega order.
We're going to find out. Well, we know that, and we're going to dig even deeper. So, where in New York did you grow up?
I grew up in Staten Island, New York.
Now, growing up in Staten Island, what is that like? And, there's a lot of jokes about Staten Island and how it's the island of New Jersey and all this stuff. But what's it really like? Give us your experience.
Well, all the jokes are grounded in reality for sure. But at the same time, it's weird because you're like, when somebody makes a joke about Staten Island, you're like, hey, like at once it's like, okay, maybe it might be accurate. But at the same time, you're like, hey, you don't do that. That's like when somebody makes fun of your little brother. Like I can do that. That's my little brother, but like you're not gonna do that. So, so it kind of is like that. It deserves the mockery it gets, but also the people making those jokes are probably not coming from any place any better. But it's an interesting place to grow up. My friend and I are always joking about how you can kind of get a good glimpse at somebody's worldview through their art. And he often jokes that you can very much see that I grew up like a person who just hated the world because of Staten Island, which I think is true. Like it really made me like hate society and like hate the people. Like it made me very it was, I don't know where to go with this, that I haven't backed myself into a corner, but it makes you very aggro towards the world. It's a very weird place to grow up.
I mean, I'm with you on that because Tommy and I grew up outside of / in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia has the same rep as angry and ridiculous. And it's the same thing. Like I can talk shit about it, but you can't unless you're from there too. And people have told me in recent years that I seem a lot less angry, and I'm like, thank you. Like how angry was I? What did it come out? So it's just, I don't know. It's just a Northeast / Philadelphia thing, I guess.
Yeah, and it's really weird having moved to the West Coast because, like, I feel like I didn't hear a person honk their horn for like 6 months that I lived here. It's like, what? How do people communicate here? It's weird. So there's parts of my East Coast anger that I would like to shed for sure. As I live on the West Coast. But there's a little bit of like no nonsense attitude that I would like to maintain,
Absolutely. Yeah, like when I have to go to the West Coast sometimes for work, and I remember people would straight up ask me like, "You're from the Northeast, aren't you?" And I'd be like, "Yes, I am." Yeah, I guess I have the vibe.
If I have to wait for any longer than a few minutes on a line for food, especially, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like this would just get eaten alive in New York. And also too, there's another weird thing that I don't think really exists on the East Coast or in New York anyway. But like, there's a lot of places here, like restaurants or bars or coffee shops or whatever. And weirdly, they'll just like have 2 days or 1 day a week where they're closed. Like, oh yeah, they're closed on Monday and Tuesdays. And you're like, what? Like, how do they survive? Like, what? Mondays? Like, how can you be closed for 2? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've like gone to a coffee shop to work, and I'll get there and the sign will just be like, oh, we're closed on Wednesdays, and I'm like, what? How? That's no.
Do they take off drinking coffee on Wednesday?
I don't know. I guess they're just like, we just have enough. I don't know. I don't run a business, and I don't know. Maybe the rent is such that they can afford to only be open for 5 days a week. But that's a decidedly not East Coast thing.
Can you imagine doing that around here?
Bars
there would
closed
just be
earlier.
People standing out front, just being like, "Yo, chief, you gonna open up?"
Yeah.
So you're growing up in Staten Island. Tell us about it. What's your thing? Did you because typically I'll go through like somebody's music history and how they started playing instruments and all that. But Dan, you're most commonly known as a writer, but what was your thing? Tell us about growing up and hanging out and what you were into.
Well, like going back to what's unique about Staten Island, I think that for someone like me, you almost get your identity shaped by what you don't like, and like Staten Island is a very homogenous, or the part that I grew up in anyway, is a very like homogenous area where, like it was when I went to high school, it was just a couple of years prior to, like the Jersey Shore airing. And it was right also too, it was right in the like releases of like Fast and the Furious. So it was like, that was the culture, this sort of like Guido culture with like really stupid cars, with like, light kits and everything on them and shit, and like that blowout haircut and like, so that was like the culture, and it was awful. It was an awful place to live, and all the men were really like macho and complete assholes and sexist, and the women were like, I realize I just said the men were sexist, but the women were like very obnoxious and stupid. So it was just like, everybody there was just like intolerable. It was like a really bad place to be. So when you found like the weird like punk kids or whatever, there weren't like a lot of them on Staten Island, but you definitely clung to them, right? So whoever was like a skateboarder or whoever was like into, the bouncing souls or whatever, like they were just your friend by default, like whether you liked them or not, because it was like kind of slim pickings. So I feel like, in a way, like Staten Island molded that part of me, because you definitely just like see what you don't want to be like. You're like, oh wow, these people are awful. I want to be the opposite of them. So in a weird way, I feel like the culture of Staten Island shaped me into getting into punk and skateboarding and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, similar to that. In grade school for me, it was still kind of jocks everyone versus me, but jocks especially. So I rejected that and found acceptance with hardcore kids and that whole community and everything. So you're into skating, you're into punk rock. Tell us about some of the early bands that grabbed you and like some early show going experiences.
Well, I was really like a big in high school. Like I really feel like the Bouncing Souls were the band that really connected everybody that I was friends with in freshman and sophomore year. They were really like the hot band in the tri-state area at that time. And like really like thinking back to it, everybody that I was friends with in high school, regardless of like what high school they went to, like everybody had Bouncing Souls patches. I feel like that one was a really important one for me. And I don't know, like like from ages like 13 to 15, it was like a lot of the bands that kids get into at that age when they find punk and hardcore, like Dead Kennedys, Minor Threat. I don't know, like that. And then also too, like there was some stuff that I'm like not as proud of in hindsight that was like more of its time, like, H2O and stuff like that I wouldn't cop to listening to today. But yeah, that kind of stuff I would say was prevalent.
Did you go into the city and travel around to go to shows?
Yeah, well, that's like the one thing that Staten Island has going for it is that, there was for a brief period like a little scene going on in Staten Island, and then, but you could get to the city, you could get to New Jersey, you could get to Philly. So there was like a that part of it in hindsight. Maybe I didn't appreciate it at the time, but that part was beneficial about Staten Island. So yeah, like when I was in high school, I would like take the ferry to Manhattan and then sometimes like go to ABC No Rio or the Knitting Factory or like kind of CBGB, but not really. Like I think by the time I started going to shows, CBG was kind of like a shell of its former self, and it wasn't like that I was against it. It was just that like no shows that I really wanted to go to were often booked there. It was more like Brownies and Tramps and stuff like that.
I'm blown away by people who grow up around here. I imagine kids just growing up and running wild in Manhattan. Did you get into any of that? Any troublemaking?
No, not really. I mean, like going to Manhattan was such a chore from Staten Island that I don't know, like I never felt really at home there. It was just going in and coming out. And in fact, like, when I would go there, this was like pre-smartphones. And so, just using the MTA maps, and ABC No Rio is kind of like confusing to get to the ferry. And so me and my friends would always go and be like, hey, do you remember how to get there? Like, no. Do you? Like, no. And so we would have to like, what we would always do, and it like worked every time, surprisingly, was we would get into Manhattan and we would just like find the person who like was a punk, like we would find somebody who had a mohawk and just follow them. Like we would just kind of like low key follow this person with a mohawk. And then eventually, like invariably, it would lead us to ABC No Rio. Cause like, no, why else would you be out at 2 p.m. on a Saturday? Right. So yeah, we would just like follow them and then like come back home after that. But no, I don't feel like I really got into like Manhattan trouble or anything.
How did you decide you wanted to start writing?
Well, kind of a big question, because like I decided that I wanted I was just in school really good at any language related stuff, like, and especially like in regards to, in comparison to like science and math, which just didn't click for me as easily. And so I like language was just easy, and not just English. Like, you know, when I would take foreign languages or whatever, I was just like, oh yeah, I get this. Like, I get how the roots of words work, you know? And so, like, you know, once you think in those terms, you know, going into college, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do as a career, but I know it's not going to be something that involves like math or science. Like, I'm not going to be an accountant here. You know, I'm going to do something that involves words or writing somehow, right? But then kind of like, I don't know, in college, I've been like trying to like, you know, I've been trying to like map this out better because I keep getting asked about it, and it's like a hard thing to explain. But I really feel like when I was in college, I kind of started to accept this defeatist mentality that like you can't write for a living. You know, and I don't know where that comes from, other than like maybe I just thought that it was really hard, you know, or like what job would I have? You know, like how do you become a book writer, or how do you become any kind of writer? I just didn't know. And so I almost took it as like an impossibility or a fantasy, and took it more in the direction of like, okay, well, what could I do? Could I work at a magazine? Could I work at a book publisher? Could I work at an ad agency or something like that? I don't know, you know, but like I just kind of put it out of my head because being like a full-time writer seemed such a fantasy, you know. It didn't seem like a career opportunity.
That's interesting. Yeah, I had a similar experience. All of my friends were in bands and touring, and that's what I wanted to do as well, but it just seemed impossible. I didn't know how to get it together. I didn't know how to push it. It just, you know, I just felt lost.
Yeah, I wish that like I'm not one to like regret the way life turned out. Life turned out pretty good. But like one thing that I really wish is I just wish that I would have gotten a better grasp on my career path and started it from an earlier age. You know, like I wish that I had just decided like, okay, to get into writing, you have to work really hard at it at a young age. You know, like my cousin, Mike, he's like my first cousin, and I'm just like, he had played in the NFL for 9 years and a really impressive career, you know. But the thing that impresses me the most about it is he just like, you know, to be a professional football player, you have to like know that that's the track you're on at age like 14. You know, like you have to just play football all through high school. Then you have to know you're going to college for football. And then you have to try to get into the NFL. And like that track just starts so early. And I kind of wish at that age, like similarly, I had kind of like gone through the writing training program, you know, like writing, you know, whatever the football equivalent for writing is, you know. I wish that I had done that. But I didn't. And like, even in college, like, I remember you had to pick your major by like your last semester of sophomore year. And I picked it like right at the end because I still didn't even like know what, you know, like I was just like, I'm midway into college and I still don't know what I should major in. So I really wish that I had like gotten my shit together a little bit. Like but I didn't know anybody who was like a writer. Like I didn't know anybody older. There was nobody in my family who did it. You know, like I didn't know anybody who could be like, hey, you want to be a writer? Here's what you should do, and do it now and just do it regularly. I just didn't know. Like I didn't know about that as like a career or anything. So I've kind of been like, I often consider myself like a late bloomer because I just didn't, you know, I didn't get it together until like fairly recently in life.
You know, I really feel you on that because similar to you, I don't think I really figured things out until, I don't know, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's just like I got sidelined with a lot of stuff, and then everything just lined up where the software is there and the drive is there and everything lines up and you can just really start doing what you want to do. So how did things start to come together for you?
Well, you know, like a bit of bad fortune. There's this quote by Cormac McCarthy that I love where it says, you never know what worse luck your bad luck has saved you from. And I was having like a shitty age 30. I had been working in book publishing for a while, and I had just gone through a breakup and a move, and I took this job because I was like, oh, maybe it'll help me feel better. But it didn't. Like I just had this job at where it was like a really bad fit, and I was just depressed. Like I was just really, and I think maybe when you get to age 30, all the things that you haven't done in life start to like catch up to you. And like not pursuing writing more seriously was a regret that I had. And especially working in book publishing where you're like working on other people's books. It's just like a constant reminder of this like dream that you never pursued. And so I was like 30 and I'd been working this one place for like Penguin for like 10 months or so. And I like had this like kind of bad meeting with my boss. And then I just like went home and I decided like, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit this job and I'm going to pursue writing. And I had some like money saved up because again, like I was working, but I was just depressed and I wasn't going out. So I had money saved up and I was like, well, I'll probably take a hit financially for a while. But this will, like people pay to go to grad school. This is like my grad school, right? This is like a career change. I'm investing in myself. I'll try it for a year or whatever. If it doesn't work, whatever. So I was like writing and I was getting like freelance gigs, but it wasn't like enough to really pay the bills, but it was sometimes those little victories keep you going, and then I started writing for this website Noisy, and the stuff that I was writing was doing pretty well for them. And then they asked me to be like a guest editor, just basically come in like, I think it was like 2 days a week at first. And they were like, yeah, just come in 2 days a week. We'll pay you for the day. And you can just, write what you want and post like 3 things a day or whatever. And yeah, come in 2 days a week. So I did that and I was doing well there. And they were like, okay, why don't you come in 3 days a week? And I was like, okay. And then they were like, you should come in 4 days a week. And then eventually they were just like, why don't you just work here? And I was like, okay. So I just started working there and I worked really hard because having spent almost like a decade in a career where I wasn't doing what I wanted, all of a sudden I had this opportunity to do what I wanted. And I really took it seriously. I really worked hard. And this is not to like generalize the people who worked at Noisy was at Vice, and this is not generalizing like the people at Vice, and this is not even saying it's a bad thing, but a lot of people who worked at Vice like really wanted a party. Like it was like a fun environment where everybody there is like 26 and hot, and I could see why it's like a fun place to be, and they really got into the culture of it. I didn't get into the culture of it. I just wanted to work. Like I was like, holy shit, like I have an opportunity to get things published whenever I want. And so I worked really hard there. And I was there for like, I think 5 years or so.
So, yeah, that's when you got on my radar, because I think I remember seeing you on Twitter or the articles or something, and I was like, wow, here's someone writing about all the music I love the most. Am I imagining this, or was there an Ink and Dagger article at some point?
Yeah, there might have been. I didn't write it, but I think I might have published my friend David's piece about Ink and Dagger. But that was the kind of stuff that I, like, those were the kind of pitches I want, because it's funny, but when I was just freelancing, it kind of sucked because I was sending pitches to editors at places like, I don't even remember, like, who even covers music? Like, where, you're just websites and stuff like that. And you're just sending pitches out. And you're like, hey, I know this new band called, or like whatever, like I want to write something about the history of Ink and Dagger or whatever, and like they would just say no, because, and I get it, like it was like, why would they, like who's even heard of this shit, like I want to write about like pianos become the teeth, and they're like, well, I don't know what that is, and I would get turned down, I got turned down so much, and then it was a really weird effect because I went to Noisy. And I was just publishing stuff about stuff that I liked. And that's what they hired me to do. They're like, you seem to have a pretty good sense of your audience. Just do that here. Just do what you want. And I was like, okay. And I was writing stuff about like the Lawrence Arms and like United Nations and like just shit that I liked that I just didn't see covered very much. And it was a really weird effect because it was all that shit did so well for Noisy. And my coworkers would be like, I've never heard of this. Like, how is this so popular and I've never heard of it? And I'm like, it's because like nobody paid attention to this, and like the audience is there, just nobody gave it like a fair shake. And so when I was there, I was just trying to write about stuff that I thought didn't get written about very much. And I was trying to take pitches about stuff that I thought wouldn't really get picked up anywhere else. And so Not to get on my high horse about it, but I just don't feel like a lot of places were covering the stuff that I was covering when I first got there.
No, I think that's great. And that's sort of how this podcast started too, because I didn't hear anyone interviewing the bands I wanted to hear interviewed and asking the questions that I wanted to hear. So I'm like, okay, let me do that myself. And it sounds like you did that with a lot of great music too, which is awesome.
Yeah, and it was so funny how so much of it felt like ground zero. Like I did an article, I wrote a profile of Dillinger 4 where I went not on tour. I was just kind of with them for like 3 days. Well, I guess a 3-day tour, whatever. And it was just so funny because like that band had been around at that point for like 20 years, and their Wikipedia page was like 2 sentences long. And I was just like, wow, I'm really like, this is, when you just feel like you go to like I've been watching Deadwood recently. So I feel like I was going to like mine for gold in these areas that like hadn't been touched yet, and it wasn't like I was so good at mining the gold. It was just like nobody had been to this area yet. So that's kind of what it felt like for a while there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And, this is good advice for anyone trying to carve out a writing career for themselves. So let's back up a little bit. Before you get the job with Vice, you quit your job, right? You decide you're going to give writing a go. What kind of gigs did you do and how did you get them?
Well, one thing that like helped me big time was that I worked in book publishing for like 8 years or something like that at that point. And I got a couple of freelance gigs, like publishing work. And so I was spending like half my day doing that and then half my day like pitching writing stuff. So that like helped pay the bills for a little bit. So that was like just a side gig that I had. But like as far as like writing, I don't even remember. I remember the thing that pushed me into Noisy was I feel like there were just like more music blogs around at that time. And I wrote this thing for this blog, AOL Spinner. It was like AOL's music site. And I like wrote it. I got commissioned to write it. And I was like, yes, finally, I got a green light. And then like 2 days later, they announced that the site was just shutting down. And I was like, God. And that's what it felt like. It was like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But, that ended up being like, again, you never know what worse luck your bad luck has saved you from. They paid me a kill fee for it, which is great. And then I pitched it at Noisy and I got it ran there. And so I got like double paid for it. And it like totally opened this world of Noisy to me. So it kind of like that one accident, now that I'm thinking about it, like really kind of changed my life for the better.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're at Noisy for a while. Yes. What happens? Do you leave there for something else? Does it shut down? What happened?
Like I had been there for like 5 years and I was definitely feeling some burnout. And also too, like, a company like that, like a media company, it changes and it goes through these like growing pains, and it had really become a different company by the time, like in the time that I was there. And so like I knew I just like was hitting the wall, and my like exit strategy was like I really had this idea for this book in my mind, and I was like, if I could sell that book, I could probably pretty safely quit the job. And so I did, but it was like so much more like drawn out than that. It was like coming up with a proposal and like getting it sold, and then like making sure the deal went through, and then quitting. And like I really, it's not something that like happens in a weekend. It was like a lot of strategic planning to like, okay, what's my exit strategy going to be?
Right. Did that book end up being Sellout?
Yep, that Sellout.
Yeah. So we're going to get there. In addition to writing Sellout, you co-wrote Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist, Laura Jean Grace's autobiography, co-written by you, yes?
Yes.
So when did that come into play?
When I was at Noisy, I think probably in 2015 that came into play. Laura, I had met Laura after like years of following her music, and I said that she should write a column for me, and she did. She was writing a column for me, and I was editing her, and we had a pretty good working relationship. And then one day out of the blue, she just kind of asked me if I wanted to help her with her book. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do that. So that came about in like 2015, probably.
How does the process work? Do you meet with her and she kind of walks you through all the stories and then you're shaping it into a story narrative?
Like that was kind of like what I was hired to do, is like help guide her through, or, putting her entire life down. And yeah, that was like one of the first and most fun weekends of book work. Was we really just like sat there. I interviewed her for like maybe 2 straight days, and then also we just mapped out like, what's this story going to look like? Like what's chapter 1? Like literally, like now that I'm thinking about it, we had like all these things written down, and she had like these journal entries that we had sorted by year. And I remember we really were like, okay, what's the story? And then like, okay, let's figure out what the chapters are going to be. And I have this picture of like, we're on the floor of a studio and just sitting on this is like fun to me, but we were just like sitting on the floor and just like had stacks of paper, like 12 stacks of paper. And we were like, this is what's going to go into all the chapters. These are the 12 chapters. And so like, yeah, that was the early work, like literally just mapping out the storyline,
Oh, that's interesting. It's almost like a band. You get together in the room, you have all the stuff, and you're turning it into something beautiful.
Yeah, and we were literally like in a studio. Like we were in her friend Mark's studio where she's recorded a bunch of stuff. And there were like instruments all around us, except for playing them, we were just, writing the words.
So you're working on this book. Are you envisioning Sellout while this is going on as well? Does this help you with the process of thinking, okay, I can write this book?
No, not really. I mean, well, I don't think that actually, you know what? I don't remember when I first had the idea, but I can timestamp at least when I knew, because I remember the night before Laura's book came out, our publisher took us to like a nice dinner in Manhattan, and we were walking there and James Murphy walked past us. I don't know why I remember that. But we got to the restaurant, and then the publisher was like, oh, like what's new? What Dan, like what's next for you? And I was like, oh, well, I kind of have this idea for a book. And I remember their like ears perked up, and they were like, oh, what is it? And I told them, and then I remember maybe this is just how I remember it, but then I remember them being kind of like, oh, okay. Like maybe I lost them or something. But that book would eventually become Sellout. And so I don't remember exactly when I had that idea, but I can definitely say that kind of crossed over, because that was the night before Laura's book came out, and I had the seed of the idea.
And how was the response to Laura's book? Did it do well? Did you get good feedback, new opportunities, all that stuff?
Yeah, it did really well. And you know what? Like, this is going to sound maybe a little bit jaded or something like that, but it got such a good reaction, and I was almost like weary of it in a way, because like Laura's a person that like I don't think that you would take a shot at her unless you really had a reason to. And so like, when the music press like kind of fawned over it, I was like, well, yeah, I think I kind of expected that. What I was more curious to see was like, what are like just book reviewers going to think of this? And then we got like good reviews in like the Washington Post and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. Like maybe like, cause I really wanted to help Laura have like a good book. You know what I mean? Like I wanted people to pick it up and be like, wow, this woman really crushed it. Like this could be like Patti Smith or something like that. Like I really wanted people to just be like, this is a really good piece of literature that this woman, it's like, yeah, it's about punk rock, but like it's more than that, And so like when book critics and stuff gave it the thumbs up, I was like, woo, that's cool. That's fucking cool.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's always nice to be involved in a project that you're really proud of, and you did your best and all that stuff. But it is nice when it's recognized by outside entities and they like it too.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get too hung up on stuff like that. But I remember it was really crazy because like it was a month before the book even came out. It was more than that, because it was the end of the summer. but I guess like advanced copies had gone out to like reviewers and stuff like that. And I remember it was in the summer because at Noisy we did like a summer Friday, and we were like, let's just go to a bar and play ping pong. And I remember I was playing ping pong, and one of my coworkers was like, hey Dan, this list just came out and my friend says that you're on it. And I was like, oh, and it was a Billboard published a list, and it was called the 100 greatest music books of all time. And he was like, he said your book is on it. And I was like, really? And I was trying to like play it cool, but he was like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And he's like, dude, you're not in like the bottom 50. Like you're in the top 50 because I'm not. And I was like, holy shit. And then it was number 42. And I was like, wow, holy shit. And I was like trying to play it cool because like that kind of stuff is like not real in a sense. But I was like, wow, that's nuts. That was the first time I thought like this book might actually have like a weird life because it's not even out yet and it's on a list like that. Like that's nuts, you know? So yeah, that was like a really surreal thing. That was like the first crazy thing that happened, I think.
So it kind of sounds like you had like all these like journal pieces, you had all of her separate stories. How do you take something that's kind of like all these disparate pieces and then weave this thematic element through it?
Good question. And I don't even remember. I should like look at my notes, but like, that's a really good question. I remember, you know, like one thing that like really guided the story itself was like her dysphoria, you know, because it's almost like a secret in the book that gets revealed. Like the reader knows it, but everybody else, it's kind of like, it's like what we're building to the entire book, right? Her like coming out. And so I remember that guided a lot of the story where it's just like in the if you look at that book, like in the beginning, it's very dysphoria heavy. Like we're setting up the reader to understand like she was having these feelings early on and they were very heavy. And then, you know, life started happening. She was in a band that got more popular. And we kind of like in the middle of the book, let it fade to the background almost completely. And then at the end, it really like charges back and it builds and builds and builds into this like big release where she comes out and everything. And that was very deliberate. Like I tried to like do a color coordinating of what that would look like on a graph. I know this is really nerdy, but yeah, that really helped dictate like, okay, how much are we going to give away in each chapter? What therefore is the chapter going to be about? You know, and so that like in a weird way was the guiding principle. And this sounds so like snobby, and I don't mean it like this, but it almost like ruined me for other rock memoirs. Like I read a lot of them, and I hate to sound like a snob, but sometimes I'm like, well, big deal, you know, like because I don't know, Laura's is like a regular memoir, except it has this like secret underneath it, and it's beautiful. And I don't think that there's another book like it. And you know, I read like as an example, I like last year or 2 years ago, maybe I read Wayne Kramer from the MC5's memoir, and it was good. And you know, he told stories about growing up in Detroit, and it was really interesting. And then it just like ended, and I was like, okay, but like Laura's book has this, but also there's just like this whole other secret layer underneath it. You know, it's like such a miracle book. And like, so other rock memoirs, I'm like, yeah, this was just a person in a band, like big fucking deal, you know? And so like, I know that sounds snobby, but I don't mean to like trash all rock memoirs, but I do think that there's like, that's just me saying, I think there's something really special about Laura's book that gives it a whole other dimension that other rock memoirs don't have.
Yeah, I just imagine you storyboarding, like thinking like, all right, we're giving this away here, but we're pulling it back here. Like that is really, really cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for that.
No, big time. Like everything that I'm very careful about like when and how things are revealed throughout a long work like that, you know?
Yeah, it's a really interesting process. And that's where the writing skill comes in. You know, you make it compelling.
Yeah, I think I've gotten better at it. Or also, too, you know what, man? Like, Laura's book is like one that I really wanted to read. You know, like I would want to read that book if I was not the one writing it. And so, like, I feel like as just viewing myself as the audience for it, I'm like, what do I want to know? You know, and then I just made it like that. I like helped her guide it in that book. Like as a fan, I'm like, I would love to know this part, you know? So I think that really helped me with her book, and that like, it wasn't just a job. That was just something like, if that had come out, if that book had come out with like somebody else as her co-writer and it had been subpar, I would have been fucking heartbroken, you know? Like if it was a bad book, I would have been just so heartbroken about that. But like, I really like wanted her to have just like a special book for a special story.
Absolutely. And yeah, like if you're reading it and you're compelled by it and you like it, that's a good sign. Like sometimes I'll listen to a piece of our podcast to check something and I'll end up listening to like half an hour and I'm like, whoa, this is good. And I'm like, that must be a good sign. Now, with your book, Sellout, let's talk about this. First, tell us how Sellout came together.
Well, you know, I'll start by like echoing what you just said, which is that like I am a big advocate of like this is something that I've been telling myself like over the last year or two, and I really believe it. Just like make the thing that you would want to see in the world. You know, like I really try to make books that I would want to buy. Granted, you know, like in the writing biz, sometimes you like take jobs just for money or whatever. But the things that I'm really proud of are the things that like I would want to see in the world, you know, and using that as a segue to Sellout, like, you know, this idea of like selling out and indie to major label fiascos, you know, it was like kind of shaped this music that I liked growing up. But I just don't feel like it had been done really. It's just not been done in book form anyway. And then, you know, you kind of have that eureka moment where you're like, why don't I just do this? Like, why I'm the guy to do this, you know? And so I did, and it's been really, the reaction to it has been really weird because like, it doesn't seem like a book that people are reading casually. Like I've gotten like a lot of like really personal messages and responses to the book where like people legitimately think I wrote it like just for them, you know? And I mean, that's a great feeling, but it's sold like many thousand copies. So it's like, obviously I wrote it for a bigger audience, you know? But like, yeah, it's been so like crazy that people are like, wow, like this is something I wanted to exist and it didn't. And I take that as like a big compliment, you know?
Absolutely. That's what I love most about this book. Now, I like music documentary stuff and interviews and all that. Even if it's not something I'm 100% into, I could watch a documentary of James Brown and be compelled. I could listen to the story of Led Zeppelin and be compelled. But this is a compelling story, literally about the bands that I love. And it's not just this happened, that happened, we talk to these people. It's written in a way that's presented as a compelling story for each band.
Yeah, I mean that's like been my career guide, is just like taking things that other people would either overlook or dismiss and taking it really seriously, you know, because there is an audience for it, and why don't they deserve it? And it always bugged me too, you know, like when I was growing up, Pitchfork was always like, you know, talking about how great like Spiritualized was, or some like indie rock shit. And, you know, and then Alkaline Trio was like little baby stuff. And it's like, well, okay, like, yeah, I realize there's like a sillier aspect to a band like Alkaline Trio, but why are we like totally dismissing it? Like, if you're going to cover it, put your whole ass into it, you know? And so, yeah, that's like been a big guide for me, is, and like, I really think that, not to pat myself on the back, but I really think that Sellout is like a really good book, and that's hard for me to say. Like, I'm really critical of stuff I make, but I think it's a good book. And I remember the night, what was it? It was like the week after my book had come out, and my editor and I went out to dinner to kind of like celebrate Sellout. And I had just been watching this Netflix show called Love. And there's this like there's this one episode where he gets a job writing for this like vampire teen drama show. And all the other writers are really blasé about it. But he's like trying to hype them up. And he's like, don't you get it? Like, Sopranos, that could have just been a show about some dumb like mafia guys. But they were like, no, let's make art. And they made fucking art, you know? And so like I told her, I was like, that's how I feel with this book. I was like, we could have made some little silly pop punk book But we made art. We made fucking art. Like we really tried here. And so yeah, like I feel like it the reason it's been doing well is because like this kind of music doesn't get serious documentation.
Yeah, and that's one thing that irritates me when people are like, "Oh yeah, I used to listen to that," or "Oh yeah, that's like." I still take it seriously. Of course, there's bands that stuck with me through the years and ones that didn't, but I think this is all important.
Well, I don't get why, they just like launched that When We Were Young festival, and like whatever, think whatever you want about it or the band's playing, but like it bums me out so much that like every write up about it, and even in the title of the festival itself, it's like so nostalgia heavy. Like when we were young, like remember when we used to like think this music was cool? It's like it just bums me out. And like imagine, like granted there are some bands that like had their heyday in 2004, 5, 6, whatever, and they haven't done anything since. But there's some bands that are like Jimmy Eat World. Like, are they a nostalgia band? Like, they've been working hard for 20 fucking years. And like, it would just bum me out if I was like one of those acts and just getting dismissed as like, like a high school band. It fucking sucks. Like, why do we talk about just that scene like that? Like, you ever say like, oh yeah, the Beatles are like a nostalgia band. Like it's just so fucking weird.
I say that. I say that.
Keith and I do that all the time.
Yeah.
That bums me out because I would see that. I saw the same thing where people are like talking about it, and it's like, yeah, you're not mentioning Red Jumpsuit Apparatus in the same sentence as Jimmy Eat World, right? Like this is a real band. Like I that band had a hit like what in 2001, like that was a big thing, and then like everybody goes off on this. Like I can see it, like people really have kind of been like, oh, look at this cash grab. It's like, okay, but there are some legitimate bands on there that I really do like, and I would love to see them. There's about 90% of them that I'm not a huge fan of, but I understand the appeal. To trash someone's like taste in music, like I always think of that. You ever see that clip of that guy who's at like one of those wrestling conventions and he starts crying when people, and he starts going, well, it's real to me, God damn it. Like I keep thinking of that. Like, this shit meant something to me. Like when people like go, oh, it's just a guy screaming. It's like, no, this is a fucking Snapcase. Are you out of your mind? Like this defined me my junior and senior year of high school. That's insane to me that you would like kind of belittle stuff like that. And Dan, I love that you've taken something that like we love so much and really assigned that kind of literary like legitimacy to it. Thank you.
I mean, like, I think that like, granted, like a lot of the stuff on that, like When We Were Young festival, I don't think is worth much of a second blink, but like I tried to distill the stuff out of it that I think is like worth talking about. Like, I think it's funny too, Jimmy Eat World specifically, like, they're a really big band in the sense that like they had a top 10 single, like a Billboard #1, I think maybe, or something like that. And they had like a platinum album and they've been going and they also have made like at least one masterpiece album, and like they've been going for like 20 years, 10 albums, 9 albums or something like that. And it's just like, it was just so weird because I was like, they've not been documented really, like, isn't that crazy? Like that there's no serious documentation of them. And, I don't know, maybe they're not like, they wouldn't necessitate an entire book. I don't know, maybe not, but like, they should be documented in a real way, and I'm glad that I got them. And there's a bunch of bands like that. Even somebody like like Rise Against. It's so funny because Rise Against, like I don't realize how big they are, but like I went to Riot Fest and they were the headliner of the last day. There was like a huge crowd for them, fucking like massive, and like they are a gigantic band and they've not been like documented either, so it's just like, I don't know, I just feel like I felt like there was like really big stories that just nobody had documented really in a serious way, like maybe they were like an alternative press cover story or something like that. But I thought that this was me kind of like doing my part to document the time that I lived through.
So in the foreword of the book, you mentioned a couple bands that you wanted to write about but didn't make the cut, like Cave In. Now that's a story I want to hear. What happened? Did you write it and it got cut by an editor, or did they just say we're not going to include
those chapters were all like predetermined very early on, so there was nothing like getting cut. I would love to do Cave In, and we've been talking about like doing an expanded paperback where maybe we have some like Q&As in the back. And so, yeah, Cave In's definitely on my list of like, okay, if we're going to do an expanded edition, I would at least like to have an interview there. I think that'd be cool. But yeah, it's just like some Sophie's Choices, you know, like the book's 400 and something pages long, but it's pretty long, but you know, you have to cap it at some point. So like not everything could be in there. But yeah, maybe. And I've been like, I have my newsletter and I've been like trying to like do additional stories in this vein there too.
I especially liked reading about Thursday because I was on a tour with them while War All the Time was out. I was selling merch for This Day Forward. I think it was This Day Forward Thursday.
See that, you know, I mentioned them the other day because, and I don't mean to like, I liked them a lot. I really did. But that guy Vadim, was that his name?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was the person I always think of, like, because I think Jeff from Thursday is I think he was a very influential frontman in the sense that like he was on Victory Records, but he wasn't singing like tough guy music, and he had like a sensitivity about him, but he was like a very charismatic electric performer. And I think that after Thursday came along, I think you saw a lot of front people like aping his style a little bit. And I remember I would go see This Day Forward, and I was like, I feel like this guy's pulling some moves from Jeff here, you know? I could be wrong.
I have a counterpoint to what you just said. Now, stay with me on this. Jeff learned those moves from Mike. Huh?
Oh, from Mike Shaw?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe.
I think Jeff took a little flavor from Mike because Mike was just always.
You know
Mike.
what? It's funny because like I looked up the time frame of them because I was like, oh yeah, a band like This Day Forward probably borrowed from them. But then I was like looking and I was like, oh no, their album maybe came out. Did it come out like before Full Collapse or something like that? And I was like, I think I got the timeline wrong. Maybe you know.
Transient Effects came out before Full Collapse. I'm
It
almost
did.
positive.
They had 2 records out before Thursday, and I will say though that Mike became obsessed with At the Drive-In and started replicating their frontman.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's where
maybe in my Sellout 2, the sequel, I'll get a This Day Forward chapter.
They would love it. Let's get it done. And so I was on a tour. It was This Day Forward, Every Time I Die, Thursday, and Thursday was touring on War All the Time. And I remember me and my friend were talking to my girlfriend at the time, and we're like, "Oh man, Thursday's going to be huge." And she's like, "You guys say this about every band." And we're like, no. They're going to be like huge. And, you know, they are in my mind.
Yeah, it's really funny because I didn't like go see them and think like, oh man, they're going to be huge. I just like went and saw them and I was like, I like seeing this band. They're a really fun band to see live. But I never had the eye for like, oh yeah, I think that they could be bigger than this. You know, like, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't like think in those terms. Like I wasn't like an A&R guy. I was like 20 years old, you know, I was like an 18-year-old. So maybe I just like didn't have an eye out for that. I just knew a good band from a one I didn't like, you know?
Dan, you're not alone on that. I was in a band with Anthony Green from Circa Survive, and if you told me he was going to be in Circa Survive, I would have been like, you're a fucking liar. like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. He's the kid I drive to school with in the morning. That's dumb.
Here's a question. Did anyone get mad about anything you wrote when the book came out? Was someone like, why did you do that? Or why didn't you put this in? Or was anyone upset that they weren't included?
Actually, it's funny that you just said that because I have learned now with like 2 books under my belt, I really always sweat that people are going to not like what was said about them or how they're portrayed in a book or something like that. But I feel like what is a much more common response is people being like, hey, I was there. How come you didn't interview me? Or I'm hurt that I was like cut out of this story or something like that. I feel like people who are left out take more offense than the people in the book. Because I really haven't heard much at all, to be honest, negative from people who were in the book. And, you know, like I tried to like, I think the book is pretty objective. You know, I really tried to keep any opinions that I had out of it. So if you don't like what Tony Victory said about you. That's not me. You know, like you can get mad at Tony Victory. I didn't say it. You know, I'm just reporting here. So I just tried to, all I could do was just be like as accurate as possible, you know? And so that like, you're not like getting mad at me, the author. I'm just the middleman here. So no, like I've actually had pretty good responses so far from people in it.
Did you actually talk to Tony
Oh
Victory?
yeah.
How was that?
Really interesting because his reputation preceded him. You know, so like going into it, I was like a little bit nervous, I guess. But then I don't know. He was like up front. He was like really. Maybe he knew what his reputation was, and up front he was really nice and friendly and stuff like that. And then like as I was poking him a little bit with my questions, he got a little bit more defensive and about stuff. And, you know, like the Tony Victory that we all know came out a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I expected. I expected him to be like gruff right off the bat, but he tried to play like nice guy for a little while, you know, and I don't know which is the real Tony, like which is like resting Tony, you know, like angry. And there's like a little bit of a nice veneer on the top, or if he's a nice guy and there's like a little bit of like pugnacious angry guy on top. I don't know, you know. So like, so yeah, that was all the interaction I had with him though.
So walk us through the night before the book comes out.
Ooh,
Did you sleep at all?
That's a good question. I've never been asked that before. Good question. The night before the book came out, it was actually kind of like the Sunday before, like, because the book came out on a Tuesday, and it was actually more the Sunday because we had the whole publicity plan that everything just came together, and like so Sunday I was like ready because I knew that the next day Rolling Stone was going to run an excerpt from it, and that was like the first publicity thing. And then Tuesday the book was going to come out, and I was going to be on NPR, and so like I knew going to bed Sunday night, I was like, well, you know, no turning back. Like tomorrow it all starts happening, you know? So yeah, I don't remember exactly what my mindset was. I was excited to kind of like get it over with. And in a way too, I think I was like, I don't know. It's really weird. And I know it's like this with albums too, but like, man, I had finished writing the book in like March and you know, it didn't come out till October 26th. So I had like 9 months where I was just chilling, like, you know, and I'm like trying to work on other new stuff. And by the time it came out, I was like, oh, right. Yeah, I got to get back into the mindset of this book. You know, like I'd really not forgotten it, but it just seemed like this is never going to come out ever, you know, like 9 months. This is so long. And then like one day I was like, oh shit, the book comes out in like 2 weeks, you know? So it's like real, it's happening. So yeah, that was kind of like my pre-book mentality.
Talk about release day. Were you anxious? Were you excited? Were you glued to social media?
Yeah, that like kind of sucks. Like it was just you know, like yeah, being glued to because you have to do it. You have to like. It's funny because like the month leading up to my book, I had to do all this work that I got so tired of. Where you're like, hey, don't forget to pre-order my book. Like, pre-order my book and you get this. Like, don't forget this. And like, nobody cares because it's like a product that nobody knows what it is yet, you know? And I'm just like, don't forget, only 20 days, only 10 days, you know? And I was like, oh, I can't wait for this fucking book to come out. And then it did. And it got so much easier because everybody's posting their pictures of the book and everybody's posting their interviews with me. And it gets so much easier. You're just like, oh, I just need to repost this. I don't need to think of like a witty comment to go along with, you know, like a pre-sale link or something like that. So yeah, once it came out, it became like so much easier to promote, and like people do a lot of work for you. I'm very grateful for everybody that posted like pictures on Instagram and stuff like that. It just gets like a weight lifted that where you're like not the only one promoting the book, you know?
Yeah, there was a great response to it. It was all over Twitter and Instagram, which was cool. What did you do that day? Did you do anything special to celebrate and say like, yes, it's done?
I did. You know what's funny? My landlords are my basically like family to me, and they're very close, and they they know that I don't like celebrating myself, and they thought I was like some kind of lunatic because I like stayed in my apartment for a year and just wrote, and they didn't see me, and they were like worried about me, like, but they know that I'm just like I don't really like being celebrated at all, and it makes me uncomfortable. So they were like, listen, the day the book comes out, 6:00, just don't make any plans. And I was like, no, I don't know what you're doing, but we don't need to do anything. And they're like, it's happening. You just got to do it. And I was like, fuck, okay. And so like I got in the car and I didn't know where we were going, and they just drove me to like a restaurant that I really like, an Italian place. And when I got there, some of my friends were there. It was like Jeff Rosenstock and his wife Christine, and some of my friends Jamie, and they just like had a little dinner for me, and it was just low key and it was nice. It was maybe like 10 of us total, and that was it. And I was on NPR that day, so like I kept getting all these texts from people. They're like, oh, I heard you on NPR. And then it was funny because like 3 hours later, I got the same text from people on the West Coast who were just hearing it, like, oh, you're on NPR. So it was just like an overwhelming day where there's just like notifications and messages are kind of like going crazy. And I know well enough that you just, in a way, you can get addicted to that. And I just knew like, this will go away. It will subside. So don't get like addicted to it or anything like that. So like all the nice stuff, I take it I'm grateful for it, but I take it with a grain of salt. Like in the long run, I'm not responsible for like what happens after the release. I'm only responsible for the book. And so like the book itself, when I look at it, I'm really proud of it. And that's all I can ask for. And, this like response that it's had has just kind of been like icing on the cake.
Yeah, that's a fantastic thing, that your friends and landlords got together and did that for you. And because I'm the same way, I don't like to make a big deal out of things, and I'm resistant. But then like I don't say anything and there's no celebration, and I'm like, well, fuck everybody. They should have done something. Like, so it's just this self-fulfilling negative prophecy. But I'm getting better with all that.
It was
stuff.
nice to like put a cap on it, like or like do some sort of like, and I'll remember that, like if you asked me what I did on pub day, and the only memories I had were just like staring at my phone and retweeting Rolling Stone or whatever, I wouldn't have remembered that. But now like I always remember who I was with that night, and it's really special,
That's great. Yeah, it was a great book. There was a great response. And yeah, you can't get addicted to it because the accolades don't last forever. You got to move on to the next thing. I think of Street Fighter 2, when you beat the game as Ryu, he's like, ceremony means nothing to him. Only the next fight.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my attitude. Like I do the podcast, I ship it off, it's done, it's posted. I'm already into the next one. I'm on to the next.
The other thing too is that like, I've gotten like bad responses to things I've made, and that can drive you crazy too. And so like I had like a real, like years ago, like I had a realization that like you really can't, like, it's one thing to say like, I don't care about bad press, but then also too, I think if you're going to take that mentality, you have to also commit to not really caring too much about good press, because it's kind of all the same, and neither of it affects your art. And so like, I kind of like all the nice stuff that people wrote, like I'm super grateful for, but at the same time, like, it's not, hard to explain, but like, I just try not to get hung up on it because it doesn't have anything to do with what I made in a way. Like you can't control it. Like once something leaves your hands like that, you don't have any control over it. And so like I try to take the good and bad as exactly the same in a weird way.
So Dan, I have a quick question. You're talking about kind of like the idea of like finalizing the book and being published. How much say do you have in terms of like, so like the blurbs that they use on the outside, like to kind of promote it, like, do you get to choose those? Is that just the publisher gets that? Like, Because some of the blurbs are people that are in the book, right?
No, that's actually one of the troubles that I had with the blurbs was like I really, when I was writing this book, like called in every favor that I had. Like every famous person I knew is in the book. And so like when I wanted to have blurbs on the cover, I thought it would be almost like cheating to have somebody who's in the book saying nice things about it. I don't know if there's like an ethical thing. Probably I'm just imagining that. But all the people who I'm friends with who are like semi-famous, like I'm pretty good friends with like Shirley Manson, but she's in the book. And so I'm like, well, I can't ask her either, you know? And so a lot of the people that I asked were like newer artists, like Jeff Rosenstock, because I was like, no, that would be cool to have like a new artist commenting on, you know, like because this the scene documented is like 20 years old at this point. But I was like, oh, but yeah, one day people will write about Jeff Rosenstock, and so it's cool to have his blurb on the book. But yeah, I really called in like every favor I had to get people in quoted in the book, and then I was like, shit, I don't know who else I know who's famous, you know.
So, Dan, you have Reply Alt, which is a newsletter and accompanying podcast, yes. And you also have the No Plus Ones podcast, yes. So you're a fellow podcaster.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that right after this. Now that I'm all out of material.
So, how do you feel about other podcasts and other podcasters? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Are you competitive? Is there a silent Cold War going on? What is your approach?
Okay,
to the
so
whole
I'm
thing?
not competitive in that because I don't really listen to podcasts, and the podcast that I do with my friend, we really try. I would be so happy if literally nobody listened to it and we could just rant. Like we should really just call each other and not record it. But the one thing that I get just a little bit, not competitive, but have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And this was a big thing that happened. Like, I feel like the numbers went up during the pandemic, but like artists, like musicians who are like, oh, I could podcast, you know, that for some reason bums me out. Like when a musician is trying to do journalism, cause I'm like, no, I picked this shitty lane here. That's not going to make me any money. You picked your shitty lane. You stay in your lane. You know what I mean? Like you're in your lane. I'm in my lane. And that you don't see me getting on stage and trying to fucking play drums, you know, like you stay over there. So that's the only thing that like, I'm always like weary of what I see. And I'm like, this guy's starting a podcast too, huh? All right. Well,
yeah, it's like a joke that everyone just starts a podcast.
Totally. It's like photography in the sense that like it's the art form that everybody thinks that they can do, but that doesn't mean that you should do it.
How do you have time to do 2 podcasts? Do you have someone to edit it for you or help out?
No, I'll edit it. The Reply All, you know, like I those are like just interviews, and I truly don't do any editing on those at all. Like I really want it to feel like just an hour of talking with somebody. I don't fuck with them at all. And, you know, granted, that's probably a disservice. They could probably be better if I put literally a quarter of my ass into it, but I don't. I just was like, no, it'll just be like a very like raw interview, and I post the audio, and that's really it. And I like that. I like that feel. I don't know if people want more out of it, but that to me is like, I don't know. This is, if you guys do this is no disrespect to your podcast, but I'm always joking about how I'll turn on a podcast and it's like 10 minutes of like hitting you with ads and be like, don't forget to subscribe and like it on iTunes and whatever. And I'm like, I would like a podcast that didn't bombard people with this shit all the time. And so like, I try really hard to just avoid any of that stuff at all costs. Granted, nobody wants to advertise with my podcast, but still like, I just try to keep that off people's ears, you know, like let's just get right into the convo.
Yeah, we actually front loaded this episode with ads for Sellout, but we're gonna pull.
I mean, do you
out.
have any like if you want me to say, yeah, like Casper mattresses are great, love it. Squarespace, that's a great place to build a website for sure. Outback Steakhouse, that blooming onion, you can't beat it. It's a good deal. What else? Take any ads, I'll do it.
ZipRecruiter and who else does podcast stuff all the time? So Casper's one of them. ZipRecruiter, and then what was the other?
Just like
one
ones where you
Lagunitas IPA.
Lagunitas and Foursquare.
Foursquare,
Yeah.
the ones where it's like, guys, shave your pubes more. Here's a rating.
Manscaped.
Manscaped. Yeah.
ugh.
What is that called?
The only advertiser that has reached out to us more than once is some kind of nut cream. It's like, hey, put this cream on your nuts and they'll smell
See,
better.
I would do
and
that
I was like,
because I think that's funny.
ew. I'm not doing that. We have too much class here at the New Scene. Oh, you also had a live event for the release of Sellout at St. Vitus. Now, this looked really cool, and it must have been really cool for you. You had Jeff Rickley there. There was a line around the place to get in. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I had two, one in New York and one in LA. And the New York one, yeah, that was at Vitus, which was crazy because it's like this place where I've seen some of the most like legendary nights of my life have been spent there. And yeah, it was me and Jeff, and that was a really special thing because like my East Coast friends came, and I hadn't been back to the East Coast in like 2 years, and my parents were there, and that was really cool. And then we did it in LA at this place called Permanent Records Roadhouse, which is like a bar/record store. And my friend Jonah Ray, who's like a comedian, he's the host of Mystery Science Theater. He did it, and this is nothing against the event I had with Jeff Rickley. It was so much fun. But Jonah being a comedian, like we just got to like riff, and we barely talked about the book. We were like doing impressions of like, he has this impression of Craig Finn. He has an impression of Milhouse Van Houten singing the Hold Steady songs. And like, you know, and then that just opened it up to like what impressions we could do of people. And so like we barely talked about the book at all. You know, it was just like such a blast. And I really want to do more events, and maybe for the paperback I will, because it just seems like we're doing like such a niche thing, but the people who it's for are like really into it. You know, like they're like, we are acknowledged. We like this, like punk comedy weird stuff. You know, like that's cool. So I wanted to do more, but like Delta at the time was getting weird, and I didn't want to have to cancel events. So I just pared it down to one East Coast, one West Coast. But I get a lot of requests for Chicago. So I would really like to set something up there. So like maybe around the paperback, I'll do more of those events because they're really fun. Somebody told me that it felt like a punk show, but for books. And I took that as like a big compliment. You know, that's the vibe I was going for.
So here's the question: what's next?
I've been writing a novel. I've been trying to write a novel. I started writing a novel. I'm thinking about trying to start to write a novel. No, I've written 2 chapters of a novel, and I've never done that. I've never like engaged in fiction, but it's fucking awesome because check this out. You just make it up. You just fucking make it. It's like lying. It's great. Like I've been like struggling so much with like making a beautiful story out of like the information and the quotes that I already have. If I could just make it up and people could say whatever, like, oh my God. So, yeah, I've been trying to write a novel. So I really would like to finish it. It's on my like map for the year.
I find that writing is one of the hardest things to do. Like whenever I have to write something for work, it takes me weeks to actually sit down and finally do it. Do you find that? Is it difficult for you to get started?
Getting started with anything is always difficult. I am a person of routine. So if I am like 2 weeks into a routine, it's actually super easy. Getting started on projects, on anything is tough. So it's like, it takes like a week or two of really just forcing yourself through something. And then once you get far along, you know, you're invested in it and you're good at it ostensibly. So it's like, you know, it's like a lot easier.
Okay, so folks, let's recap. Now, here's what we're going to do. Number 1, we are going to purchase Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist, the Laura Jean Grace autobiography,
Great book.
co-written by Dan Ozzi.
Greatest rock memoir ever written. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or number 42 at least according
you know,
to that list.
Look, I'm grateful to be on that list, but some of those 41 were questionable. Okay. Bob Dylan, come on. Does this guy not have enough accolades that he's got to be the number 1 book? Come on.
Yeah, so we're going to read the book, right?
Yes, absolutely. Or just purchase it. I don't even care if you read it or not. I get the sale once you buy it.
There you go. Purchase it. Now, and unless you've been living under a rock, you should know that Sellout, the major label feeding frenzy that swept punk, emo, and hardcore, is out. It's out. We have to purchase it, and if we feel like it, reading it. Yes?
The reading part is like, give it whatever. Once I get the sale, that's all I'm concerned with.
But folks, I can vouch for the book. I have read it. It's excellent. So many good bands. I mean, I'm reading about all the bands I love. Jimmy Eat World, At the Drive-In, Thursday, Blink-182, Green Day. They've got it all.
Yeah, greatest rock book ever written, for sure.
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that because these are the bands I actually care about. What do you think of that?
Yeah, like it's again, like people tell me that it feels like I wrote a book for them, and I take that very flattering because many people have said that. So it's like, okay, well, I guess I wrote a book specifically for a lot of people.
Yes, thank you for writing that book for me.
Sure.
Okay, and then after we read Tranny and Sellout, we're going to read the Reply All newsletter and then listen to the podcast and then listen to No Plus One's podcast.
You know,
right?
that last one is like, that's put that at the way bottom of your to-do list. Like that's chopping block material right there. That's fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, listen, Dan, this has been a really fun conversation, and we just want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us tonight.
You guys were so polite. I don't know why, but the word scene like really invokes a mean spirit, and then you guys are like started off talking about like East Coast attitude, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to get tough for this. But you guys are just very polite boys.
Did you expect to come on and us be like, yo, what's your book about? What are you doing?
I've gotten some of those, but I expected, I don't know, maybe again, it's just the word scene in there. I thought we were going to have to like do that thing where we're like out remembering each other. Like, No, I saw them at the Birch Hill. Yeah, no. Oh, yeah. Well, their singer used to be my my babysitter. So I totally. I thought it was going to be like that type of thing, but I didn't feel like I was like outdone or challenged at all. It was great, except for that this day forward thing.
This is the new scene,
right? The kinder scene, yeah.
There you have it, folks. Dan Ozzi. Excellent conversation. Excellent human being. I liked hearing about the specifics of how he got a writing career because in my mind, Tommy, that sounds like one of the hardest things to do. Like, how do you become a writer? How do you do it? I wouldn't even know where to start. Well, now I do because Dan Ozzi told us. And the book is great. I'm not bullshitting you people. The book is really good. It's written in the way that each story of each band is a story. It's like a compelling tale of their major label experience. And some of those stories I was even part of in my own little way. I'm not saying I was like in the bands or anything like that, but I listened to the bands or I was out on a little piece of a tour with Thursday. So it was really interesting to read. And like I told Dan, these are the bands that I care about. To read about these bands in this way is great. This is the book for me. I really loved the whole conversation.
Yeah, there's even bands that I wasn't like I didn't really know a lot about, but the chapter still, like the one about the Distillers is really, really good. I don't really know that band super well, but the kind of influence of Tim from Rancid and all the things that went along with them kind of coming to prominence was like, oh shit, I didn't know this. I have to go back and check this band out. So it's definitely one of those books that it'll expose you to some music that you can then go back and look at and go, oh, I've really never given this band a chance, or I never really spent time listening to this band's catalog. Maybe I should check them out because their stories they're just so compelling. They really are great.
Yeah, the way Dan writes it, he makes it interesting.
And I will say this is the other thing. I kept thinking about this when he was talking about, his first 7 to 10 years in writing and how he was, kind of working in all these different places. And, the stuff that started going up on Noisy was stuff, came up by just coincidence. And he was like, oh, they just were interested in something I was writing about. I remember when I was doing my degree in journalism, a lot of the people that are teaching you are adjunct professors. So these are people that work in, journalism for a living. And I would say every single one of them, with the sole exception of one, discouraged us from trying to pursue a career in writing. They were like, find another job where writing is a key part, but do not try to cobble a They kept using that phrase together. Don't cobble a living together by writing pieces one on top of the other. It is a never-ending cycle of pitching, writing, rejection. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, all right, never mind. Like, I will never try this.
I get it. It's like telling someone don't go into music. The gig life is tough.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't pay off for everybody. Well, actually, it doesn't pay off for most people. But if you truly really have that passion and you want to be a part of it, and it's something that you find as not only rewarding, but something that you can't do without, like you have to do it. Like this is what you do. Then it's going to...
You have to love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Dan said, he loves writing, and he was just writing about the things he loves. You have to love it. Much like how we love this podcast, Tommy.
Exactly.
Like you can't do what we're doing every week if your only end goal is like, I want to be popular or I want to talk to X band. Like you have to really love the work.
Yeah, because the reality of it is that this could go nowhere and it could go anywhere, and I'll still be in the same place of like, I love talking to my friend and talking with bands about music I love.
Exactly. This is what we did way before the podcast. Remember sitting in that little room in the Shaw house?
Oh my God, yeah.
And we would just play records and listen to records, and whatever girls were hanging around at the time would be upset with us because they'd be like, is this all you guys do? And we'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, this is it. This is the extent of it. I go skateboarding.
We were
sometimes.
Probably not very fun to be around.
Hey, they still hung
now
out.
Now that
all
I
the
think
time.
about it, those poor women. Like, if I could go back, I would have like gone out to eat with them or something, and instead of just sitting around talking about bands.
Like, all right, let's listen to this Cryptopsy song 4 more times, and then we'll go do something.
Well, we've done it, Tommy. Another episode, but before we conclude, let's talk about the most important subject of all.
What's that?
Ourselves.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I was hoping you were going to come in professional form and be like, ourselves. And I'd be like, yes.
No, I thought this was going to be another recap of like where they should go and put in some reviews and where to give 5 stars.
No, I did that already. I'll hammer them with that again at the end.
Okay.
Tommy, tell me how you are doing as a human being, individual living on the planet Earth.
I'm doing great right now. Everybody's pretty healthy. Baby has an ear infection, not too serious, got medication. She's already on the mend. Everything's going really well. I'm a little
You had an interview, right, for this job?
Oh, yeah. So I had an interview for the job. It was offered to me. However, I can't actually formally accept it until later this month. They are coming up with a new salary scale. And the new salary scale has to be approved by the board. The board doesn't meet until I think it's February 16th or 18th. When they vote on that, then they'll be able to make me a finalized offer. But in my head, I'm like, I'm not taking a position where I don't know the salary. That's insane. So
yes.
The interview went really well, though. It was not what I expected it, in that they kind of switched it up halfway through. But I think that was part of the interview, was like, can he adapt to the change? Because this job is constantly in flux. It's constantly changing in terms of responsibilities. It's constantly changing in terms of the people you're managing. So I think they did a great job with it. The biggest concern I have is what this will look like in terms of my time as it starts, but it's a long way off. This wouldn't start until the fiscal year ends, which would be July 1st. So we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get to it, and we'll kind of figure out what that looks like. But like we've done before, we'll always just make it work. We always just make it work. So
exactly. Well, Tommy, I have good news. You've also been promoted at the new scene, and you will now edit the show and handle the social media. What do you think of that?
Oof. All right. Welcome to the last episode of the new scene. Actually, it's not the last one. It'll just be like it'll get done on a bi-monthly basis.
Yeah, the show is now once a month, and it might not even come out at all. No, I'm happy for you. I hope the salary is good and that you get the job.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I hope I get the job too, because it really, I think I've gotten pretty decent at teaching. I wouldn't say I'm a great teacher by any stretch of the imagination. I think I'm pretty good at most of the things that I do. And I would really love to be able to help, especially people that are new to teaching or newer to teaching, just get better. And that's the biggest thing is, all of this is about making sure the kids have a great education. And, that starts with having teachers that know what they're doing and have quality people that are above them to kind of like steer them in the right direction and kind of fine tune their craft. So I would love to be a part of that, but we'll see what the future brings. We'll see what those numbers look like. But everything's going really good on my end. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's happy. I got my interface in the mail. That's ready to go. So I'm ready to start my home recording journey. And that's it. That's all I got. How are you?
I'm good. I'm surprised you're getting to the home recording before me. Like you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
I'm happy because I don't think I'm not good. I really want to do it, but there's just no time, between the show and whatever spare time I have. I like to jump on Twitch for an hour or two. And so I don't know, I guess home recording is just not in the cards for me right now. So when I do it, Tommy, you're going to have to show me the ropes.
Oh, for sure. You know me. I love talking about stuff like this and explaining it in great detail.
You love talking, period.
Yeah, sometimes. Depends on what it's about. If it's about something,
don't bullshit me.
If it's about something interesting.
Hold on. You love talking, period. Do you not realize that?
We just went through that whole episode. I probably said like 4 dozen words.
No, I'm not talking about the interviews, Tommy. You know that's different. I'm talking about regular life.
Oh, like in my personal life? Oh yeah. Yeah, I love talk. I love telling stories more than I love talking.
When you're talking, do you realize that you're talking a lot? Like, are you like, I'm talking right now and I love it? Or do you just do it and you don't realize what's going on?
I think I've become more conscientious of it over the past, like, probably 3 or 4 years. Just in that a lot of times, one of the big things I tried to work on in my classroom, just like even talking to the students, like that economy of words, making sure that I'm explaining it in the least amount of words possible so the kids have the most amount of time to be able to work. So I think I've been a lot more conscientious of that, but I don't know. With adults, maybe I don't. I actually probably don't think of it as often when I'm talking to, like, say, Kelly. Like, if I'm talking to my wife, I don't know if I don't think I'm conscientious of it.
Does she ever say, like, okay, that's enough for right now? Or does she ever, like, walk away mid-sentence?
No. I don't get that from her. But I do. This has happened in, like, this has happened in the last, like, month where we were in bed talking about something. And as I'm finishing this story, I'll lean over and go, all right, I'm really tired. I'm going to go to bed. And I realize I've been talking to a person that's unconscious for God knows how long. She's just fallen asleep while I'm telling a story. I'm like, all right, well, let me turn off The Simpsons and go to bed.
I'm drilling into you, Tommy, because I have nothing to report right now.
So you don't
I literally have nothing to share. There's nothing going on.
But with you, no news is good news. That's a good thing. Usually, if you have a lot to talk about, it's something that's bothering you. Like, it's something that's like.
Well, maybe that's a problem, Tommy. Maybe I need to talk more about the good times.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe that is something.
You know what it is? There is some, like, good stuff going on, but I can't talk about it on the show.
Gotcha.
I'll tell you after.
All right.
I'll tell you after.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's like personal life stuff. But, like, don't get excited, folks. It's not like a relationship or anything crazy like that. That's territory I want to stay away from for a while. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Until you're ready. Like, you know, you'll
Yeah.
feel that when that comes in, you'll go, oh, okay, this actually makes sense and feels natural.
I think I am ready, but here I'll reveal something on the show, Tommy. I think I am ready, but everyone that I like would be a not good situation. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that's something to look at.
Can I restate it in a way to make sure that I'm 100% on what you're saying?
Yes.
The people that you're interested in have aspects of their life that aren't necessarily healthy for you as a person.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Gotcha.
Yes. So I just look at it through a lens, Tommy, and I do not engage.
Gotcha.
See how centered I am? See how mature I am now?
I mean, here's my thing. Every time anybody was interested in me at any point in my dating career, I was just hyped on the fact that they were interested in me.
Exactly.
That was enough for me to be like, okay, now I'm infatuated. Let's go.
Well, that was kind of my problem before. Not that exactly, but I've done a lot of introspection, Tommy, and I think I know what to do and what not to do the next time.
Gotcha.
How about that?
Well, you live and you learn, man.
I mean, yeah, you've got to. You've got to. Well, folks, we're out of time, so I'll remind you one more time. Apple Podcast reviews, Spotify reviews, shirt. Buy the shirt. It's probably the best looking shirt that's ever been created, right?
I agree with that.
There you go. Tommy agrees, so it is true. So we're out of time for this episode. We're back next week with a brand new episode and a brand new guest. So thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.